welcome everyone to an exciting morning edition of the Journeys on Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and yes, I am awake. And we're going to have a fun episode for you this morning. I have to say, I am truly blessed to have this guest on. I met her through the Summer Days Conference on June 13th, hosted by Gina Virginia Casella. And quick shout out, there is another conference this coming Saturday on the 11th. So if you are available, tickets are available. So little shout out for Gina. And Sheila's presentation impressed me so much that I was like, I really wanted to have her as a guest after hearing her presentation and seeing what she was going to be talking about. And then realizing when I looked at her bio, how much more she knows and is aware of. And I was like, oh, I am so glad that she's coming on. And so we have a lot of great topics for you guys and probably a few little surprises coming your way. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my amazing guest, the one, the only, metaphysical dreamer, experiencer, author, musician, all kinds of experiences extraordinaire, Sheila Spiral Sister Murray.
Thank you, Michael. My goodness. I'm so humbled at that intro. I guess because I'm old now, I feel like I just keep stacking experiences.
Well, experiences doesn't matter on age. I mean, we assume by age, there's a lot of experiences, but I think there are some young people that probably are looking at us and going, "That's all you've experienced? Man, you're like behind."
Right. And I agree when we're open to experience, right? And when we're curious, we're going to stack up a lot more of them. But you're right. I have known some people that I thought that were really old, and I thought, why aren't they more wise? Would have expected more wisdom from all those years of living. But if you don't do a whole lot, or you don't do a lot of different things, maybe the breadth of experience, maybe that's what it is. But the
Well, and
openness, yeah.
yeah, the openness and being aware, because
Sure.
like I will have a lot of people will walk up to me and they're like, it's so cool that you have paranormal experiences. I've never had one. And I was like, really? You've never had one? And they're like, no. And I go, well, have you ever, like been in a room and you start to smell like a flower or something unusual, and you can't figure out where it's coming from? They're like, yeah. I'm like, congratulations, you had a paranormal experience. And they get all excited, and I'm like, yeah, it's things that we just write off as going, yeah, I imagined that.
Right. Or like you said, you don't even notice it. You walk through the room, you smell something, and just think, oh, somebody else just walked through with the perfume on or whatever. We rationalize a lot, right?
Right.
So, yeah, my first paranormal, well, actually, the more I just started to explain one, and then another one popped into the mind. But as a child, even, I had, I got to back up a bit. I grew up in an area that now I know is extremely haunted, but at the time, as a child, I did not know that. So all I knew was that some friends of mine, we used to love to play around the railroad tracks, kind of like that movie Stand By Me, only we never saw a dead body. But anyway, I always loved that.
Darn.
Yeah, no, never saw the dead body, but we did talk about witches, and I wondered then, why is that even a thing? Like, why are we talking about this? But we loved Halloween, and we loved putting on little community haunted houses and things like that. So one day, a couple of my friends kind of bullied me into going to this old haunted house, they said was a haunted house, who had an old lady witch that lived there, which kind of scared me at the time. I just remember being, no, I was that kid. I'm not going in there. I
Yeah.
don't want to meet an old witch. So I must have seen or heard something to that point to be wary of it. But they kind of pushed me up to the door, and she opened the door, and that was about it for me. I turned around and hightailed it out of there. The interesting thing is that fast forward, oh my goodness, 30 some years, I was married to my second ex-husband. I was relating that story to him about being so scared, kind of being bullied into it. And he was kind of a bully himself. So when we took a trip back to my hometown, he's like, we've got to go to the witch's house. And I'm like, what? Like, that came out of nowhere. That came out of the blue. I said, I am not going back to that old lady's house. She probably doesn't even live there. And she was old at the time. I was a little kid, blah, 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 rationalizing it all the way. And he made me go, and he pushed me. Like, he walked up behind me to the door of the house and was just literally pushing on my back. You've got to face your fears, which was, looking back, was a good thing, right? So I did. I
Right.
knocked on the door. A lady answered. I do not believe it was the same lady, but she laughed. He started telling her the story because I was kind of stuck for words. And then I explained how scared I had been and was kind of bullied into it. And she just laughed, and she said, I think she said it would have been her mother or grandmother, but she's like, no, she was not a witch. And she didn't believe the house was haunted, but she did tell us about the slave trade that had happened this was next to the Ohio River. So between West Virginia and Ohio, they had an underground tunnel, and that people used to say that there was a tunnel entrance into the basement of that house. So she thought that's where some of the legend came from, but she wasn't even convinced that there had ever been a tunnel under the house. So it was kind of a mixed bag of, I don't know, do you believe it? Do you not? It's still a mystery. But yeah,
Mm.
so that was across the river from Marietta, Ohio. Marietta is the oldest city in Ohio. It was the first town, and they have ghost tours there now. So it's really thrilling. I still want to go back and take a ghost tour there myself because I have not done that yet.
No, that's very cool. And Anchor Haven is saying hello, and thank you
Oh,
for sharing it out, Julia.
yeah.
And so I'm kind of, you know, when I'm hearing the story, a thought that popped in my head was, if she was a witch, would she admit that she's a witch? And could she have done some magic and got younger and been like, yes, I'm the daughter, when not really the daughter? That's how they,
Yeah.
pass through time. But no,
You
I'm
never know.
sure she's the daughter, and I'm not gonna perpetuate the
The
witch
myth, right?
story by everybody going, "Oh, he's right, she's this." And I also wonder, though, a lot of times, yeah, the glimmer magic. Julia's right,
Yeah.
but there are so many times when, as a kid, because of like stories like Hansel and Gretel and others where witches are in there, whenever we see an older person like on their porch or coming out of their house when they normally don't, how many times does our mind go, ooh, there's a witch?
Right.
And so I find it kind of funny, that it's like you're like, yeah, we called her a witch, but I don't know why. I'm like, yeah, probably because you read Hansel and Gretel and a few of
Probably.
those other stories, and
Yeah.
society just keeps
It's
perpetuating it and going, yeah.
Yeah, it's all programming, right? Like I've told Anchor Haven before that I and still am a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz. So that definitely, even though back then we only got to see it, once a year, uh, go ahead, once a year. So we live camera here. Um, and so, yeah, I was very fascinated with that story and with the witches, both the good and the bad, and
Yeah.
all that. And then I dressed up as a witch several years in a row when we put on those haunted houses. I loved it. I just felt it was fun. I didn't really see anything evil or dark about it.
And what I find interesting, talking about the Wizard of Oz, for example, is we have, this lady who is being personified as, wicked, and she has these flying monkeys, protecting her, which I always thought that was kind of interesting, notion. But then I was like, the climactic scene at the end where, water does her in. I'm like, how, would water, melt her, because I'm sure it rains. I'm sure, what is she drinking if she can't have water? And so
Yeah,
it like raised all these questions in me now when I
excellent.
look at it. And then I look at the show Wicked that came out,
Yes.
and it's like, oh, this is how she became wicked, is she was not wicked. They made her wicked. And
Hmm.
part of me goes, how true is that in society today, where somebody picks on somebody and mocks them, and yeah, now they become this bitter person.
Yep.
But then at the same time, I look at it and go, why are we now being shown we need to take pity and relook at all the villains in all of our stories as kids and be like, oh no, they're not the villain. That wasn't their fault. And I'm like, yeah, I still got to say it kind of is, because they were a choice, in my opinion,
Hmm.
to how they acted. And I'm just curious, with your artistic background and your background into like the metaphysics and dreams and everything, if you've thought about that and what you think about,
Well,
where
yeah.
now we're trying to sympathize with the villain-esque personalities.
Right, right. You immediately made me think of the Minions movie,
Oh
the
yeah.
Despicable Me and all of that, right? And having been married to two who I would have called villains in the past, but with age and wisdom comes learning, and all of the different religious studies that I've done, I've come to realize that practice, I guess, of the mirror work. And so everything's a mirror, right? And so they're just teaching me, not that I'm going to seek them out to, beat me or abuse me or that, right? I'm not saying to go looking for it kind of thing. Just like when we played on the railroad tracks when I was a kid, we didn't stand on the tracks and wait until a train came along, right? We weren't going to tempt fate. We didn't have a death wish. But certainly, um, if one came by, we learned pretty quick not to stand too close, right? It's like, don't touch the hot burner on the stove or you're going to get burned. So I think it's just a matter of learning, but they present challenges. That's what I was going to say. They mirror back to us something that's perhaps in our shadow or our some weakness that we feel we have. Maybe we don't really, but we feel we have it. So, like, I was shy and I was scared of that lady who was supposedly the witch, right? And I was forced to confront and forced to face my fear. And now I no longer have that fear. I would go up to anybody's door. In fact, I did many years later in sales. I went cold calling and knocked on people's doors all the time. Wasn't afraid to speak out. Wasn't shy. I was out of my shell. But maybe that's all it is the whole key or secret to life is facing the fear and doing it anyway. Like, I still don't want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, But my son has went skydiving and he feels the better for it. So it's just, you've got the choice to pick and choose your experience, right?
Right. And you raised an interesting question with like the plane on the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And I often notice, in stories and, watching it like on movies and TV shows, how many times like somebody is on the track and they're like skipping back and forth, with their legs. Nothing happens, and then the train comes, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now they're stuck. And I'm like, and I think about it now though through the paranormal mind and going, could a spirit have been there watching and going, oh, so this kid wants this. Well,
Hmm.
let's give them the thrill and hold their foot down because, their foot's not moving as they're hopping, in place, but all of a suddenly now it is
Yeah.
stuck. I wonder, could another force be at play there?
I wonder that
And
too. Like the shoestring gets caught, you
yeah,
know?
like how and why does it inexplicably get caught in that one moment where it's like, oh, the train is coming and now it gets stuck, where when there's nothing around, never gets stuck.
Yeah, exactly. And then you think of the elementals, right? So some of those, or the little fairies or gnomes, or the ones, the trickster, they call it in Native American lore, it's the trickster.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's true. That's why I don't know, because I do a lot of study around that whole principle of we create our own reality. And well, do we though? I mean, maybe we create a large chunk of it, but then there, like you said, there's these other powers and forces that maybe wrestle too. So now I see it more like a weaving, like a rug. So if you pull on a string, you can kind of pull that thing out of shape. But a rug or a tapestry is made of a bunch of colors, different even lengths of yarn and things like that. So yeah, so all together you see this beautiful picture, but or design. But if you pull a string completely out, you're going to have a hole that's harder to
Yeah.
fix.
And I kind of think like, especially in like that situation, I would say you put out the energy of I'm not afraid, look at what I can do.
Mhm.
And as the train is coming, it's like you're like, yeah, I can do this. Well, it's like you're putting out this energy and persona that I think the energies pick it up and they're like, okay, so let's see how brave and really you really are.
Yeah,
And they're doing it, and it's not them like being the trickster, so to speak, picking on you and being like, yeah, we'll show you. It's more like they're going, oh, this is the energy you're giving off. So this is what you want. So we're going to manifest it. And it's where I think we really truly get that adage of be careful what you
what
wish
you
for
yeah,
because they always say it may come true and it may not be the way you want it to. And
that's
that would be the perfect scenario of I nearly lost my foot being stupid
yeah,
thinking this, and it's like, but then we'll write it off and we'll just be like, oh yeah, I was so lucky. See, I knew I could do it. And it's like we totally miss
yeah.
everything else that was going on still. And so I think that's where a lot of times the, lessons get worse in my opinion because they're like we try to do it the easy way
Yeah,
here. You weren't paying attention, so now we're gonna up the scale
I
and
believe
figure
that.
out where you will pay attention.
Yeah, and not only believe, but I mean, I've seen that. I've experienced that regarding health issues in particular. If someone isn't learning the lesson from a little pain, the pain's going to continue to increase. So, and impact your life more and more as well until you stop and take care of it. Now, it may just be a question of awareness. So, you just, like you said at the beginning, you've just got to increase your level of awareness. And it spins off into a lot of different directions.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of curious, what got you into looking at dreams in space?
Well, okay, I can diverge on that one. So the dreams, well, first it was my mom always telling me about her dreams, even as a child. And then I began having dreams. But my dreams then as a child were more, I mean, I did have some scary dreams. I remember having some nightmares, but they were more on the playful side. They weren't really anything mystical or that was going to teach me something that I would take and use the rest of my life. But definitely, when my mom passed away in 2017, and of course, I'm a much older adult by then. So that's almost been, what's that? So 3 and 6, 9 years ago. So my mom actually came to me in a dream that I called a visitation, because that dream, after she passed, was so real and vivid and intense. Now, I forgot the chunk of dialogue in the middle, but I remembered the beginning and the end. And it was just like it would be happening right now with you sitting here. There wasn't a veil between us. So I felt like I was actually in the room with her wherever we were. And we were having this really great conversation about life and different things. So I that's really that dream and or visitation was really what piqued my whole study into dreaming. But I had been also a member of IONS. Now I'll go back to the space side, because when my husband and I both worked at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, we I became acquainted with people who were in the IONS, which is the Institute of Noetic Science group. And I learned about Edgar Mitchell, and I learned about he was an astronaut. And I learned about his experience. He had an epiphany when he was out in space, looking back at the Earth, how small we were and how fragile we were as a planet, and it changed his whole worldview. And I thought, for an astronaut, someone who was heavily studied in science, for an experience like that to change him so much that he then went on to found this institution, I thought there's got to be something there, a lot more there, that I need to be involved with and study. And so it's a study of consciousness. And again, it goes back to that we create our own reality whole idea. And that really intrigued me. I just wanted to learn more about that. So, yeah.
No, I agree. And I have friends that are in IONS, and I've attended a few events that they host. And so I totally get it. And
Good.
yeah, it's a really good stepping stone kind of atmosphere of where they're out there, but they're not like to the extremes out there. So if you're unsure if you want to go out there, it's like, yeah, it's a good spot to check out and go, yeah, what do I think about this? Is this something I could get behind? And so would you say that attending the ions and, hearing all of that kind of drove you into experiencing and seeing like fractal geometry and thinking about aliens and life out there, and like opening yourself up and realizing, all the energies that are around?
Yes and no, but the fractal, I didn't even know what fractals were until, it's in my book. I'd have to find it to give you a date, but it was actually before my mom passed. I had always been looking as a child for my sisters, my siblings that didn't make it. My mom had 6 pregnancies, and I was the only one that lived. So, or I say it that way, but actually one of my siblings did live, I found out uh, during this searching process and researching process, I found out that one of them lived to be less than a day old. But she did live, she was named, and they even had a funeral for her. I've even almost tracked down where she's buried, but uh, anyway, that's another tangent. So I call those spiral thoughts because they just, you know. But anyway, the search is still on. So what happened was I went to a hypnotherapist because I wanted to lose weight, and it was a birthday present to myself. I think around 2015, maybe 2016, and so I went to this lady. I didn't really know her very well, but I knew she had written a book called Angel Babies. And I thought that's fascinating. And I read the book because of my mother's miscarriages. It was all about miscarriages. And I just wanted to understand maybe more of what my mom went through during those times. So I read the book and I was so intrigued and fascinated by it that I scheduled the appointment with this author lady, Patricia McGivern, and I went to see her for the hypnotherapy session in person. Well, as we started, she regressed me. We hit past lives. I'm bawling, snot's coming, I'm the hot mess, right? Like laying there just, and I would even try to open my eyes and she would remind me gently, it's okay, keep your eyes closed, would just do some deep breaths and then right back into it kind of thing. She's really good. So so during the course of that hour or so that we were doing the hypnosis session, my sister Christina, she came to me. This is on my blog too, by the way, so people can look this up and read it for free, this whole story. But yeah, she came to me, she introduced herself. She was a little blue dot. And so she actually told me things that I know that I lost, but that when it's the right time will come back to me. So I've got an awareness of that. But one of the things was definitely keep my eyes out, keep an awareness or a lookout for that specific color of blue. It's called a cerulean blue is the color.
Oh yeah.
But interestingly, if you have it on a lampshade, which has happened, the more light you put through it, that color changes. So when there's no light on shining through cerulean blue, it almost looks black. But when you shine a light through it, so there's a lot of metaphysical teaching just in that. But I'm drawn to the blue glass. I later learned that because we later went on a sacred Celtic journey with Patricia, my husband and I both. And one of the past life regressions that I had during that trip was that I saw myself as this eel-like creature who was paving a road under the sea with blue glass. I was literally laying blue glass like pavers that had drawing and writings and symbology on them, but I didn't know what any of that was. So yeah, that's a whole fractals. She was the one that told me about fractals. So Christina said the word fractal. I said it out loud, and Patricia said fractal. I've never heard that word before, And then we talked about it after, and we still couldn't put our heads together about it. I left there, going back to that first regression now, that hypnotherapy session, and I left there just in a blubber of just, I didn't know which end of me was up. I felt like I had received a download. Didn't know that word yet, but I felt like that. I felt like my head was full of information. And so I left there telling all this stuff to my husband, who thought I was completely whacked out and out of my mind. And so I just started, and that was kind of that ions connection too. It's like, now I want to go back because I had that experience. Let me see how that marries up. How does that tie? Where does that come into play? And I started looking up fractal and fractal geometry. We had a friend at the time who said I needed to look at sacred geometry. I started wearing the flower of life. I still have a habit. I set my tea always on a piece of wood with the flower of life on it. It was flower of life everywhere for a time. Then that took me to trees and pineapples and broccoli and all that sort of thing, right? And my husband being an artist, he was talking about the face, the structure of the face, and how all that sort of thing is. It all begins from the fractal, and then the fractal is a design for people that aren't aware, and it just keeps repeating. The one of the best things to look at would be the broccoli or the pineapple, probably. There's another one in my book. It's not coming to mind right now, but especially when you cut things open and you see the smallest part in the middle has a design, and then that same design repeats outward. And I don't know if it applies to every living creature or every living plant or whatnot, because so many things do look different and you really only find that in certain ones. So, but then again, I don't own a microscope. So maybe on the microscopic level, we would see more of that.
That's
Great
true,
question.
and yeah, it's kind of like the quantum, every
Yes, it
and
definitely
so
takes the quantum.
yeah, and so you mentioned metaphysics, and I'm kind of finding it, interesting because having a metaphysical background myself, I kind of curious to see, being aware of the metaphysics and following that, what impact do you think that has on your, writing your books and your music? And does it, impact your husband's art? Does he, understand it too a little bit and translate it through into the art?
Yes, definitely, especially the songwriting. We'll lay in bed at night like we're two kids having a slumber party, and we'll just start riffing on these topics. And one night I said to him, it's almost like when we die, we just go into the dirt, and then we just start growing bushes and trees and weeds and flowers and all this stuff. Because I'd been talking with a friend or coworker, and we had been talking about bloom where you're planted. It was something she told me, and I said, "That's right. That makes sense to me. It's like we've got to grow through the shit. We've got to grow through the dirt, you know? So when people just pile the manure on, be thankful, because we're just going to grow right through it. We're always reaching for the light, just like a plant." So I said that to him, and he came up the next day with this song that was all about, it was called The Connection. It's on his YouTube channel. And he just redid it actually with AI, which I actually like better than the people that we paid hundreds of dollars to demo the song in Nashville. But I've sang it. I learned the song. So there's a video of him playing guitar, me singing it. That's on Vimeo. I think it's several years old now, from maybe 2019, 2020. But no, I take that back. That video is 2019, when we moved to off grid, because we lived on an off grid property for a while. We moved there right before the COVID lockdown. So yeah, so 2020. Yeah, 2020. That's when that was. So, what is Sheila's YouTube channel? You can find me on YouTube if you put in my name and do at Spiral Sister. Terry B was asking. I just saw that. And thank you, Iron Bear, noticing the two of us, Michael and I, right?
Yes, I was about to post that up, and because I found that interesting, and I was looking to see if I had your
I know, I
YouTube
don't,
channel linked, and I don't, but I can grab your YouTube channel really quick. But yeah, what she's talking about for the people who are going to be listening to this episode is Iron Bear says, "Holy crap, I just noticed you two have similar facial features. Wonder maybe a relation at some point." And it could be. I don't know. I haven't. I kind of, when I did my genetics, I started out looking at everybody, like all the cousins, all the nieces and nephews of everybody. And then I realized this is going to take me forever to go back. And so I started going, okay, who are the direct? And just focusing on the directs. And so I don't know. We could have somebody, in common, or there is always the fact of, I will say, there is on a soul level, be that is where we look alike, is because we're in a similar soul family. And
Yeah.
so there's always that aspect.
Yeah.
But I kind of agree, and I was kind of smiling because I was like, yeah. And Iron Bear is saying can't forget past life, and I've actually started thinking about the past life deals in a new way. And I was talking with a guest about it, and we started looking at a lot of our past lives. Are they really past lives, or are they an aspect of us on another level, and or another dimension? And so that's what we're seeing, and we're really seeing ourselves, and that's why it resonates to us, is we're seeing a version of ourselves. And so here is your YouTube channel for
Well,
everyone.
yeah, that's my husband's. Oh, that's mine. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. And then I just shared my husband's. I had to go on my phone to get it. So,
No,
yeah.
thank you for
Oh,
that. And
yeah.
I'll definitely go and subscribe to your husband's as well. And
Hopefully it popped up. Of course,
let me see.
I shared it through YouTube, so it might roll in later.
Uh, well, it's well, did it
Pop
come
in.
in?
I didn't want to have to lose my window.
Uh, no, it
No,
didn't translate through. It just says just shared my husband's link. If you put it in the private chat, I can put it in for you and share
okay.
it.
Let me. Oh,
And Perry says thank you, and she says her husband is a artist as well. And
oh,
so I'm a little bit curious too, when it comes to music and the art and everything. Is there ever a time when you sit there and you listen to something that you've done, and then you're like, wow, this is so cool, this is awesome, and then like maybe 10 years later you go back and you listen to it and go, oh my god, what was I thinking? This is like totally like,
yeah,
should we take this down? This is like so not in alignment with where we are today. Why did we ever put this out?
yeah. I have felt that way actually, and I that's one reason I prefer blogging to writing the books, because even though the book like this one is great to have, because I can use it as a reference if I do forget like a date or something. But it's I can't I could go back and change it, but it's a lot more work to go back in and edit it. So like I had looked up fractals in nature just so I had a list there, because I do sometimes forget. Oh, the seashells. Yeah, seashells for sure are another great example. So, yeah, but the blogging, I go back and I update some of my old blog articles. I've updated 50 times because something, either I had typos that I learned how to fix later, because I've worked in technology for 35 years, and 3 of those years was specifically as a technical writer, and I took the job because I knew I wanted to write books. I had been writing the blog for 10 years or something at that point, and I had written articles on other blogs too, but I wasn't. See, that's the my husband says I'm a perfectionist, and I argue with him because I don't think I am, but I have a bit of perfectionism in that if I feel that weakness within myself, I'm not as confident, and I just want to have that, not necessarily for the credential, but the confidence factor, so that I can put out something that's at least worthy of even asking people to spend the money on it, right? So yeah, so I did that. I worked as a technical writer for 3 years for a big company, and I learned. I was on a team of writers, and I loved the lady that I worked for. That was my lead. I just loved her so much. She was great to me. And when she retired, I literally cried. That's how that's how much I learned from her, and just loved her. And when she retired, she didn't even have a computer at home. She left the entire, and I just thought, I can't do that. I can't throw. I bought a new laptop then. I didn't want to leave technology. It still frustrates me sometimes because, as you know, things change so quickly, and we
Oh
always have
yeah.
application. But I feel like that'll keep my brain active,
Yeah,
right?
and I'm curious to, like you're saying, you update blogs and,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
your opinions of some things may change and
Yeah.
whatnot. How do you react or respond to people who are like, oh, 5 years ago you said this and now you're contradicting yourself. Why are you, contradicting yourself? How do we know now what's true and what's not true? And,
Right.
how do you,
How
say
do I
this,
solve it?
respond to that?
Yeah. No, well, we're always learning and growing. That's my opinion. And I should change. I should change my opinions over time. If I'm doing my spiritual work, that's what I mean, that's the way I look at spirituality, is that I'm like the tree. I'm learning and growing as I grow. I can see the higher from the highest level or whatever. I started to say depths. That would be the opposite way, but maybe my roots are growing, into the darker, wider, broader recesses of the earth too. So maybe it is from the depths as well. I won't knock that. Thank you.
Well, and you could also look at it as going into the depths of out there
There you go.
versus
Yeah.
here. And
Yeah.
so it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah. I've always thought I was more of a chameleon though. Like I've had long hair, very long hair. I've had very short hair. I've shaved my head. That's all out there on the blog too. My husband still, he's like, shave your head again. You have such a great looking head. I'm like, that's something about that just doesn't sound right to me. But okay.
Yeah. No, talking about hair, I happened along this video and I don't even know how I got it, but I think it was on TikTok and a lady was like talking about the exotic past, and everything. And I was like, what? And so I'm like, what is this? And it kind of got me curious. And she goes, well, the women in Sparta would have long hair. And when they got married, they would cut their hair short. And I was like, okay. And she goes, well, they would do that so the guys would be attracted to them and think, oh, because they spent more time on the battlefield, that they would view them as a fellow dude. And I was like, that's a little bit disconcerting, but somehow I can see that, but I'm like, I would hope that's not the reason.
Yeah.
And that, the feminine aspect would be appealing and not the, oh, we need you to look like a dude to, be, enthralled with and be happy I married you. I'm like, that's a
Right.
little disconcerting if that's really true, but at the same time, they were a warrior culture, so it
Yeah.
does kind of lead a little credence to that, and maybe that is. But I kind of take and wonder, you know, a different way is, in society, we look at women and we are taught look to their hands. If their hand, a certain hand on a certain finger has a ring, that person's taken. If there's no ring, they're not taken. So now you start to look at, is she hugging, holding on to someone? Maybe that's who she's dating. So she's off limits, or if she's alone, hey, she's available.
Yeah.
I wonder if in society, by cutting their hair, it was to let other gentlemen or other soldiers know, hey, I'm off the market.
Oh, good point. It very well. And you just reminded me, I did not know that about Sparta, though. That's very interesting. Um, you reminded me, though, talking about cutting the hair short or blending in with the guys, is that there is a famous blues guitarist woman, black woman. Her name is Deborah Coleman, Coleman, and she was fantastic. My husband actually loves her. She's passed away now. I think she passed in 2018. But if for any of you all that love the blues, she is just magnificent, and she could shred too. I mean, she had the rock influence. That's what made her special, in my opinion, and I think to him too. But Deborah Coleman said she has a famous quote out there. I just read it the other day. It was something to the effect of, when you're a woman playing with a band of guys, you want to fit in with them. And her advice to women musicians was to learn how to talk about football and baseball and all of that, just to be able to fit in. So I don't know if she would have went as far to cut her hair, that really stood out to me. I thought, there's something about that. I used to play a lot. My first friends were mostly all boys, so I used to play a lot with boys as a very young child, and then also they didn't bully me as much as the girl. There was a girl right down the street from me who was my age, who bullied the hell out of me, pulled my hair, bit me, all the stuff, right? And we still don't, to this day, don't know why. We're friends now, and we became friends actually when we were in, like, we went to kindergarten together, and that's when she was bullying me so badly. My mom cut off the she wouldn't even let me see her anymore until we were in high school. So by the time we graduated high school, we were friends again. But I used to ask her, why did you bully me so badly? And she said, I have no idea, other than I was raised around really tough cousins. And I guess that's how they just played. And she looked at it like play, and I looked at it like torture. I mean, I would scream and cry and, all that, run home to mommy. But the boys I could play with all day long and have a great time, because we would do, gosh, I don't even know. We would do like the train, all the stuff down at the tracks. We would look at bugs. They would dare me to put my hand down in a hole and try to reach for crawdads, just because we lived close to the river. So just things like that. Caves. I loved caves. There again, the mystery element, right?
Right.
Crystals, rocks, anything shiny. My husband still teases me. Oh God, I've lost her now. If we walk through somewhere and I see the shiny objects. So, and I have too many crystals to suit him too.
Oh,
But
I know that feeling.
I'm still looking at crystals though.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
a spiral one right back there behind me. That's a spiral crystal. It's like a pink granite carved into a spiral. So yeah, it's hard to see, but
Yeah,
it's
that's
back.
really cool. And what's kind of interesting is, as you were talking about your female friend that you're friends with now that was bullying you,
Yeah,
when you first said bullying you, the thought that popped in my head is, we often don't look at what their situation was, and that may be all that they know.
yeah,
And so they don't see it as bullying. And so And then you go in and you say, yeah, she was, that's how they played. And I was like, wow, I'm like picking up on your story without even knowing anything about your story. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I was like spot on that, and that we were on the
Same level. Yeah.
same thought. And I'm curious too, a little bit around, we say that our name has a meaning to us, and what we call ourselves, there's a energy or something behind it. And I've noticed that, for me it's true, and with other people I've kind of noticed, and I'm not even sure they have noticed. But when I look at, you like going by the acronym Spiral Sister, and I'm like, I can't help but feel like there's a story there.
Absolutely. I mean, all my life I've had this spiral curly hair, right? And I most of my life I didn't like it too much. But also from our trip, and I know it's hard to see, but I'm wearing a triple spiral pendant from that trip to Ireland, because at the burial chamber in Ireland called Newgrange, and it's a UNESCO site. So if you're not already familiar, you can find it pretty easily. I also have that on my blog. Um, there is a glyph that's etched into the stone of the triple spiral, and this is made from that glyph. So it looks like an S, which S for Sheila, right? And then we actually went to Ireland twice in 2019. We went in July, and I filled out a little 3.5 by 5 card for a lottery that they offer at Newgrange at the Visitor Center. Once you go, you are then allowed to fill in this card and register for the winter solstice, which is only handed out to a certain number of people. And every year they have thousands and thousands of applicants from all over the world, anybody who visits there, right? So we were on a tour of 12 or 14 people. And so our bus driver, as well as everybody on the tour, wanted to fill this in. Now, whether or not they even gave it any thought as to if they would win or not, I don't know. But my husband said to me, I don't know why you're filling in this card, because we're not coming back if you win, because it's in December. It's cold as hell. And you don't like the cold. And we lived in Florida at the time. So, of course, you can guess what happened. I won. I won the lottery. And so we went back in December. And when we came through customs, the gentleman asked me, so what brings you back to Ireland in December from Florida? And I said go into the chamber, because it's a big deal for winter solstice to go in there with 20 people or something. And he said, so you're visiting Ireland for our weather. And he got a big kick out of that. That was the big joke, right? But yeah, so that spiral means a lot to me. And that's when I bought this. We were in Dublin with friends, and I had been looking for something special. And the gentleman who we invited to go back with us, because my husband had already been in the chamber once, and he's like, I don't resonate with this at all. So he's like, I don't want to go for the winter solstice. It's too early in the morning. I got to get up at dark 30. It's cold as heck. I blah, 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 right? The excuses. So I said, okay, so who do we take? Well, I called the gentleman who was the bus driver, because he said when we filled in the form, he's like, if you win, you've got to take me because as your guest, because I've filled this in every trip I've been here with the group and I've never won. And he lives there, so he really wants to go for winter solstice, right? I didn't even know what the winter solstice was, really. I didn't do any in detail exploration about the topic. So it was hilarious that I got chosen. But yeah, so then the lady who we went on the tour with, Patricia McGivern, I called her. She already had a cruise booked with one of her daughters. And we called someone else, and they said no for some reason. So then I thought of John, and I knew that he was metaphysical because he had been to the Monroe Institute. And I'm really fascinated by the Monroe Institute, though I've never been there. to do some of the like remote viewing and things like that is what they
Right.
teach. But yeah, so I thought, well, maybe he'll want to go. And sure enough, him and his wife both wanted to go. So we spent a whole week with them in December, just bouncing around Dublin and having a great time. We did a ghost tour there, which was fantastic. We I can't even, yeah, dinners where they do the music, and so you got, the real authentic like Christmas stuff, and everything was decorated for Christmas in Dublin, and it was just awesome. I'm so glad that we got that. But one of the other reasons was because since we got up so early, and since our tour guide bus driver was not available, he turned us on to another. She filled in for him, this other bus driver, and her name is Edel, Edel, and I can't pronounce her last name. It's like Reagan or something. But anyway, I still follow her, and we're friends on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. She was a doll. And during that bus ride, my friend John and his wife were kind of falling asleep. So from Dublin to Newgrange, Edel and I were just talking. And she said, "Do you know about your name?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, Sheila, it means woman in Australia, blah, blah, blah," right? And she's like, "No, do you know the Irish meaning of Sheila?" And I said, "No, enlighten me." So she told me all about the Sheila na gig, and how the Sheila na gig day in Ireland falls the day after St. Patrick's Day. So it's March 18th. And when she said March 18th, it was like the world just dropped out from under me. I felt all the feels, because my dad and I were supposed to meet on March 18th, and he passed away on March 8th of that year. So I was just, I was just became a fountain. I was just, "You've got to be freaking kidding me right now." Like, the whole reason I think that I won that and got to go there was just for her to tell me that. And for me to know beyond a doubt that my dad was still with me in some form or fashion, on
Right.
some ethereal plane, my dad was still with me. So it
No,
was,
that's beautiful. And I'm kind of curious, talking about, the Irish and the Celtic, the triple spiral actually has a Irish name or a Celtic name if it's the same that I'm thinking of, and that's the triqueta,
I have heard
which
that,
is the symbol of protection actually. It's like
but
a
I don't
protection symbol.
but I don't know if it's exactly the same as this one. I just don't know. Is it more because I've seen the one like Donna Eden wears where they're exactly the same size. So it's like two here and one here. This one's
Well,
different.
so the triqueta actually has many different forms where I've
Hmm.
seen it where it's like three triangles or three spirals. And so I think it has to do with the fact that there's three interconnected, and
Moving parts.
that, and I don't know that they all have to be the same size, but it's just
Interesting.
the way that it's formulated and everything. It's like, yeah, there. And when I was studying paganism, we had to pick a symbol to do, for, who we were going to be and everything. And I got a flash of, like you're saying, these three
Hmm.
energy vortexes, and I was like, what is that? And I looked, and before I even found it, I was like, try something, and I was like, I don't even know how to pronounce this, and then I saw it, and I was like, oh. And my mind, as soon as I saw it, I have an innate ability sometimes of being able to see a word in a foreign language and be able to say it without
Oh,
knowing what I'm saying. And
wow.
so when I saw it, I go triqueta,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's how you say that? And so it was like, it was kind of cool how it came out. And PJ Davenport is saying it's the third day Danan. And
Never heard that either.
I am not familiar with that either. And so I'm wondering if that's, not like an Irish way of saying the triqueta.
Or
And
maybe.
I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it right. That's just how I
Yeah.
hear it, and so that's how I pronounce it.
I mean, if it's anywhere, it should be on the Newgrange site, that UNESCO website where they talk about Newgrange, because they have a visitor center. They just redid it all, and they do have pictures of it on there, and they talk about it. If there was a name, it should be there, and I don't remember it, but that doesn't mean anything really.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah, so it
I,
could
I
be.
remember when you did your presentation, you talked about Newgrange.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm
No,
sorry
no,
for doing that, but
no. uh,
I wanted to ask, and it was like during the Q&A, it was, short time, but when
Yeah.
you were, in Ireland the first time, I'm sure you got a flavor of the energy and
Yes,
everything.
absolutely.
And going to Newgrange then, and then Newgrange with the solstice, was there a lot of difference in the energies, or did it feel the same? And it's like we just in our mind go, oh, because it's the solstice, there's some special to it, and really isn't.
Yeah, that's a great question. I hadn't really specified the feel that I got from the energy, just because it was so flippin' cold in there and dark. When they turn off the house lights in that monument tomb, I could have my hand right here next to my face and I couldn't see my hand. I tried it. I was like, I always wanted to know where is it so dark that you can't see your hand in front of your face? That's it. But yeah, I didn't. So actually, I felt more palpable energy when I was at Noth, which is Knowth, right? There's the Dowth and the Noth and the Newgrange all kind of there together as a series of monuments. And Noth, we went to first. And as soon as I stepped foot on the top of that mound, because that one you don't go in, you climb the stairs to the top. When we walked to the top of it, I turned to Richard right then, my husband, and said, I'm feeling this. Like, this energy is going all through me. And I've been to Sedona and I've been to the vortexes there, and I felt it there as well. But the Noth one to date is the most energy that I've ever felt from a site, from just walking onto the site and not even touching anything. Now at Newgrange, I felt peace and calm, the same as Stonehenge. When we went to Stonehenge and we went inside the stone circle because we were with a Druid priest, and he that our guide Patricia had made a reservation to specifically do that because she wanted to be able to regress us later and have us kind of be imbued with that energy, I guess. And I did meditate there too. I sat on the ground and meditated, which was something I really wanted to do. But I thought the ground might be too mushy and not be able to sit down. But I was able to do that, and I dropped into meditation very, very quickly. And I definitely give the credit to the sacred space for that happening. That was at Stonehenge. So I think each of those spaces have their own unique, just like we do. We all carry that energy signature with us. Perhaps that's the soul imprint that we carry from life to life. I don't know. I'm curious about that and interested in that subject, which is why I'm studying. I'm studying this book right now in a book club, the the Tibetan
Oh,
Book of
yeah.
Living and Dying. Yeah. So I'm not even halfway through it yet. So don't tell me if anybody's read it. Don't give it away. But yeah, that's one reason I'm studying that book, is to learn more. I know, like, the fringy part about reincarnation, but I don't really know what they teach, right, from the Buddha and the Dalai Lama perspective. So
Right. And so I think this is a good point to you had asked me if we could do something a little bit different in the
Sure.
show, and so I feel like this is a good point to where I had announced there was some surprises in the show today, this morning, and what the surprise is Sheila is now going to interview me and has questions for
Yeah.
me. So we're kind of flipping the script for a little bit, and we'll see how many of these questions I can get through.
Well, I only have a couple, so I won't put you on too much of the spot here. And since
Well,
you
my answers tend to get long, so that's
okay.
why I say,
Well, since you talk about the paranormal so much, right? I figured you would be the best person to ask this question. So, Michael, what do you hope to one day see or experience while paranormal investigating?
wow, that's a really good question. What do I hope to see or experience? Well, okay. I actually have one in mind, and that would be so we talk about the veil between the our reality and their reality, meaning the other side's reality,
Hmm.
thinning. And so I'm waiting for, and I would love to witness the day to where when we're at a location and we're like, oh, you used to live here, and the spirit that we're talking to like had this aura field around it to where it looks like it's walking through a portal or something,
Mm.
and physically show up and be like, oh, this is what happened, this is my story, and have direct communication so that we know we are literally talking with this person, and everybody that's in the room is experiencing it and seeing it, rather than like the medium's going, oh yeah, this is who I'm seeing, and you're like, well, that's cool, and you know I can't validate it for you, and so I'll
Yeah.
take your word for it. And I don't mean it to sound like that, but there is a difference when some people can see and others can't, to
Right.
where the day when everybody can see, that to me would be like the ultimate paranormal like experience to have on an investigation.
Beautiful. Yes. So, not, I mean, because you already know, you have a knowing, right? But like you said, you want to validate it to yourself somehow,
Well, and it's that everybody can see, and
or
like
that
even
everybody.
the people
Oh,
that are there, can be like, oh, and start interacting and like
gotcha.
have that, you know, knowing of, okay, this is this person, this is the energy. So, yes. And so, because in reality, we, on an investigation, we sense energy. So, we,
Hmm.
in a way, imagine what that energy looks like. It's projecting itself to us.
Hmm.
And so, we assume in a way that that is who that is, and this is what's going on. And so for them to physically come through and be able to
Hmm.
interact, it's like now we know, who it is. And I think too, it would, on a side note, it would take the fear of going to the afterlife
That
out
was,
of people, because here is someone that's literally just walked in from the afterlife, so to
yeah,
speak, and be like, hey, this is what's it's like for me, and this is the life that I lived. And just to have that kind of conversation with everybody there, it's like, to me, would be the ultimate mind opening experience of everyone being like, yeah.
yeah.
you had just totally opened my mind because, and my hope would be it would dispel the fear and not, like
Mhm.
drive people to more fear going, oh my God, it's real over there. Oh my God,
Yeah,
and being like, yeah,
right.
let's put you outside while we do this so you don't lose your marbles, so to speak, while the rest of us are like, we're ready for this. We've been
Right.
preparing for this.
Absolutely. So that brought to mind that scripture about if you have eyes to see and ears to hear. So in your view, when the veil lifts for everybody, sort of like
Right.
what is it, midnight on Halloween or whatever, when the veil is thin. If it was that all the time though, and we could see and feel and hear and interact and know without a shadow of a doubt that there's something there. So
Exactly. Yeah.
the next question, and the only, but you landed on it, was do you believe, or do you have, or have you yet found any proof, what you would consider to be proof of the afterlife?
I have actually, and I've kind of talked about it a few times, but I don't talk about it often because it's a personal experience,
Yep.
and
Okay.
it
That's
was the way it unfolded was so amazing, and I'll share it with you. And I leave some of the details out because I was told by a medium, don't give all the details because people can hear that and then
yes.
will use that to lead you astray or give you false,
Right.
testimonies, so to speak. And so I was like, that's a good point. I never thought about that. And so what had happened was my dad had passed away on the summer solstice at like midnight or the morning of the solstice. And it was the summer solstice, not, and
Not the winter. Yeah.
I think I said winter, but it was
No,
summer.
you
It
said
was in,
summer.
oh,
Wow.
okay.
I'm, yeah.
And it was like on I think it was like Wednesday midnight or Wednesday, the start of Wednesday, Tuesday midnight, switching to Wednesday.
Mm.
It was in that time frame where we
Mhm.
went from the Tuesday to the next day, which was a Wednesday.
Wow.
And on Friday, I notice a friend of mine is on a investigation and she's live streaming. And so I was like, I really don't want to do an investigation, but okay, maybe this will help distract me and, get me out of my head. And so I tap on the live and join in, and she sees me join in, and she's like, oh, hey, I'm sorry for your loss, but thank you for. Or actually, I don't even think she knew at that time. I think she just was welcoming me on and was like, yeah, there's a team here and, can you help out? And I was like, yeah. And so when she stepped away, I would start asking questions of this little boy spirit. And he would respond to me. And then other people in the live would ask a question and there's nothing. And then I would say, hey, little boy, can you do this? And then he would do it. And so it was like kind of funny that he would respond to my text over other people's text.
Yeah.
But I had been there before a few times, so they probably were like, yeah, we know this guy, so we know where he's coming from and what's going on. But it's like, I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, hey, I'm going to try and get some sleep. Um, yeah, she did know because I was like, yeah, I'm here for distraction. Hopefully this will help me, with coming to comfort, and give me some peace of mind and help me, sleep, and I'm going to try and go to sleep. And she said, well, thanks for helping out and thank you. And then, that was a Friday night. And then Sunday, I reach out to her and I was like, hey, by the way, how did the investigation go? And she goes, oh my God, you are not going to believe this. And I said, what? And she goes, after you left, everybody started getting this name and nobody could take this name. And I was like, really? And so I was like, so what was the name? And she tells me the name and I got chills. And I was like, I can take that name, but what else was going on? And she goes, well, everybody's equipment just all of a suddenly died. And all their batteries just, it was like no batteries would work, no equipment would work. So they just closed it down and we're like, we're done. And I was like, well, cool. And she's like, so you think you can take the name? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, before you do that, let me tell you what happened on Saturday, because I didn't know there was a Saturday investigation. And I was like, okay, yeah. And she goes, all their equipment drained in the beginning, but everybody started getting a taste for a certain food item. And we're in Texas, and this food item comes from the north. It's hard to get down in the south. And I originally come from the north, and she didn't know that. She didn't know anything about my family and everything. She just knows me. And I said, what was the food item that you guys were craving? And she said, I had to go find this and eat this. And I was like, that was my dad's favorite food. You picked up my dad. My dad was there. And I'm even getting chills right now, sharing this. And to me, that in that moment, it was like, I grew up with knowing the afterlife was there, but it was always like a out there kind of
Mhm.
knowing. And this moment, it was like the out there became in here and in here. And
Yeah.
there was like no way. I was like, yeah, I have absolute definitive for myself. There is an afterlife. Nobody could tell me there is no afterlife,
Right.
because somebody who didn't know my dad's name, didn't know what city we were originally from, and the food item that was like our favorite food item to eat here from back there,
Yeah.
it was like those three things. Haha, the triqueta, the three again.
Yeah.
But those were the moment where I sat there and I was like, the afterlife is real.
Yeah.
It became a no longer searching for,
Right.
is it real?
It was
It
real.
became the knowing it
Yeah.
was real.
The knowing. And that's more than a synchronicity. Did you say, or did I miss it, that the show that shut down after you left, the name was your dad's name?
It was my dad's name that was being called out,
Yeah.
that they heard, and they said they heard it 3 times.
Wow.
And so, and when I was talking with her about it, she goes, well, now that I know who it is, you know, I went and I told my mom about it, and my mom goes, well, your dad knows you do this kind of stuff, and so it's really cool that he would reach out. And I said, yeah, and it's kind of interesting that he picked that location that night to
Yeah.
make himself known on that weekend, because it's a location that I went to a few times, and I was really good friends with the lady who does the ghost part there. And the story of the location was, it was a funeral home that was a train depot. That the joke that we all would tell each other was, the owner of it at the time would make his own ice cream. Well, he used the embalming room as the freezer because it had all the equipment in there. And so all the ice cream would be stored in there. And because it was homemade, it was like, oh my God, you would go there and be like, this is like the best ice cream ever. And unfortunately, he passed away. And so they had to close everything down.
Mhm.
But it was like, in our mind, we're like, I would be sitting there eating this ice cream or having a milkshake and be like, I can't believe how good this ice cream is coming from an embalming room.
That's hilarious. I won't eat ice cream again without thinking of that.
And, just to clarify, there was no embalming stuff
No,
in the room with the ice cream. It was just that
just the
was the room
temperature.
that was used. And it was the perfect room to like, because it was already, had the cold because they needed the cold for
Right.
everything, and so it was like the perfect conditions, and I was like, it's just is so funny how
Is.
things get reused, and if you don't know the history of it, it's like, yeah, nobody cares, but when you do know the history, it's like, oh, this paints a whole new persona on it.
Yeah, talk about repurposing something.
Yeah, out of death comes ice cream.
That's
Really good too.
that's hilarious. It also takes me back to Newgrange too for how cold it was the winter solstice. But I just found that the, the dichotomy of the summer solstice experience for you and your dad and the winter solstice experience for me, that's just, I don't know, that brotherly sisterly thing. um, Again, a synchronicity, I think, or a commonality. I always like to look for the things we more have in common than the things we don't, so I like that.
I agree, and
Yeah.
it's amazing how being in different regions or even different countries, how we can connect with people over the internet,
Mm-hmm.
which is technology,
Mm-hmm.
bringing the energy waves into a means that we can communicate and share, and that we can discover all of these nuances now and
Yeah.
be like in real time and going, wow, where in the past it's like, if being where you are, if you wanted to ask me a question, you'd have to write a letter, mail it,
And
wait
wait.
for it to get to me, wait for me to read it, wait for my response, my return to you
Yes.
to then get it. And it's like by the time you get the response, it's like, oh yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm glad you answered it. And it's like by the time we got all the answers, a lot of times we're like, oh, I already figured it out, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, I completely moved on, and so thanks, but no thanks. And then when the telephone came around, it was like, well, it's too expensive to call and talk, and so it was like you'd save everything up for that one moment, or you could make that call and
Right.
make it worth the while. And then it's like, oh wait, I forgot to ask this, and you're like, now I gotta wait again.
Well, for me, it's all full circle because I grew up during a time when we had the party line telephone.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah, telephone
remember hearing
guys,
about those.
telephone guys call it POTS, plain old telephone system. Right? But the party line, oh my God! And we had a small town. You pick up the phone, you'd hear who was having an affair with who, and all the juicy stuff. Right? It's like, hang up the phone. I know somebody else is on the line. I don't want to hang up. This is good.
Yeah.
But then now we have Facebook, and all the social media. So I love. I was an
And
early adopter of almost all of it. Pinterest, everything.
yeah, and I look at the party line, the aspect of it, and I'm like, the fact that anybody could pick up into conversation
Hmm.
all over the area, how many lines, were actually actively listening that like they just had their hand over the
Yeah.
mouthpiece and just listening and go, and versus, what else, was going on around. But then I was like, I look at, like if somebody is choking and you're
Mhm.
trying to get an emergency, you're like, you pick up the phone and
Right.
people are talking and you're like, I hate to be rude, but
Yeah. We
somebody's
have
dying, we need the line. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, all of this is taking time away to where so
yeah.
and so is probably not going to make it now because
Because you were talking.
nobody is getting off the line because they're all like, what do you mean? What? Oh, well, yeah, it's like, really?
Yeah,
Really?
really, I know. They gotta talk about their love life or the fight they had with so and so. But yeah, we had to do that a few times. This is an emergency. We need to break. Or we would, I somehow, I don't know how we did it. We would contact the operator. Maybe we were able to bypass that and dial O. I don't know, but it seemed like we had the operator break in, or maybe that was for a busy signal. I'm confusing it with the busy signal. Yeah.
Well,
So
it could be that, the operator is listening. And so if you
yeah,
said, oh, there's an emergency, they probably cut the line and automatically put it through.
they may have.
But Iron Bear is making a funny comment. He goes, for one, how could you contain yourself from not laughing so hard?
Right. Yeah, there was some of that too, but I definitely got good at like pressing that little button very quietly and the hand over the mic and all that. I got really good at that. And also because we had an extension phone in the house, so if I wanted to hear what mom and dad were talking about with somebody or something, yeah, I got good at eavesdropping. My mom was not thrilled with me. I was kind of mischievous as a kid.
Yeah, and talking about extensions, it was really funny when I moved, and I was like 25 into my own townhouse. There was like the phone was activated, and I'm like, I had to call the phone company because I was like, yeah, only the upstairs rings when people call my number and not downstairs. And they're like, well, I don't we don't understand. And finding out my downstairs phone was tied into a neighbor's line. And so I was like, I'm not the first person living here. So how did people not realize the phone is not ringing downstairs, that it's only upstairs ringing? And so I'm like, I can't be the only one that's like paying attention and noticing I'm only getting calls in half the house. How did this go unnoticed and unchecked all this time? And what's interesting is they'll do like a little like switcheroo and they're like, okay, now it should ring down here, and sure enough it does. And I'm like, it can't be that easy to activate or deactivate a phone line because it costs so much money to get those done. And I'm like, it took you 5 seconds. How? What is the expensiveness of this? Wait a
Right.
minute. It's like a whole new area of question starts coming in and going, I could have done that. Why did I have to call you?
I know. I love it. Technology. Gotta love it. And how fast everything has changed just in the course of our lifetimes.
Oh yeah. And I've technology, we look at, we're kind of spoiled in today's terms of when we look at the 17, 18, early
Mm,
1900s,
yeah.
it would take years before technology leaps would happen. And then we hit like the 40s, 50s, and all of a suddenly it's like what would take a century now took 10 years.
All after Roswell.
Right. And it's like, wait a minute. And it's like on our technology scale, we went from a rotary phone to now we have a phone in a car,
Mhm.
which
Camera
probably
phone.
wasn't our smartest evolution,
Yeah, probably
but
not.
it did simplify life. But it was like, yeah, people weren't ready for it. And then all of a suddenly we're like handheld devices that they would flip open like the Star Trek communicators, and everyone's like, this is like Star Trek. And
Yeah.
people never realized, yeah, and this came, and everyone's like, how cool is this? And the first one had the large batteries. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
those,
I
where it's like
sold
your
some of
hand
those.
barely fit the
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah, I saw
And
Radio
then it
Shack.
became the streamlined phones that we have now that look like mini iPads and
Yeah.
can do all this stuff. And all of this technology has really, it started in the 80s where cell phones were introduced, 1980.
Mhm.
We're in 2026 and we are mini tablet phones that search the internet, do all this they're like mini computers in our hands. And people don't realize how short a period of time that is, that all of this technology has come around, and we just take it for granted that, yeah. And I stumbled on this anime called Dr. Stone. And what it is somebody sends out a petrification wave where everyone's turned to stone, and this fluid cracks the stone, and they are, and he's restored to life. And so he creates the science world where he uses science to everything. And what's interesting about it is, where we're talking about, where we're making all these leaps and bounds,
Mhm.
he wakes up and he's like, okay, in a matter of a year, I can, take and bring us into um TV or cell phone. And he's inventing all these things using Stone Age technology. And it's really interesting how we sit there and we look at how fast he's able to do it, and we don't even notice that was as fast, almost as fast as we did today. But how life was so much different because they're using methods we don't use. And like the cell phone was a backpack with like a funnel to talk into, and the old telephone version.
Right.
And so it just surprises me, that we're like, yeah, it's almost like a mockery kind of show of, look at all this technology that comes up, and we just totally take it for granted. And here we are, in an age of no technology, and look at how much we have to figure out and learn to recreate. And it's like, yeah, recreating is a pain in the neck, but yeah, it's interesting. And I'm just curious, do you ever sit there and step back and go, this world, now has this and this, and like you're saying, and pointing out, you've been around for a lot more than most people. So what, how does, seeing all these leaps and bounds, how does that impact your life? And does it create, a different perspective, or do you just sit there and go to a lot of it and go, it is what it is? Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
No, I mean, I think I've always been intrigued by it. And my dad had a CB radio business, so I was always interested in that, the transmission of the voice across the wires, and the fact that you could talk skip certain times of the night, you could talk to people in other countries. So this whole internet thing has just, I mean, it's like I was born at the right time because this is something that I am so invested in and interested in, intrigued by. I actually wanted to work on hardware because when I worked, one of my first jobs was at Radio Shack, and I loved the circuit boards, and I used to buy the little kits and work on how to make my own circuitry. But somebody came in, one of my customers, and he said, "You're already wearing eyeglasses. You will be blind, if you continue down that path." So he suggested that I do software. And then I started getting involved in software. Went to a university and I worked there for 10 years. And during that time, I took some coding classes. But I really didn't like coding. I liked some aspects of coding, not all of them. I liked picking out the the problems, just like I like editing now. Like they'll jump off the page at me. So I can spot the semicolon difference from the comma, things like little things that sometimes the coders would miss. So as part of my day job, I would, for many years, I was a systems analyst and a business analyst, and I would review code just for that. But
Yeah.
I didn't like having to come up with it on my own specifically. They had to know a lot of dictionaries, like a lot of different languages. You had to know what to do to make it do something, you know what I mean? And I just couldn't quite make the leap with that in my head. My brain wasn't quite wired for that. So I think the way it turned out, it was really good because I did focus on writing a lot more user guides. I was very customer focused, people focused. I liked connecting people and I liked being on the calls where I could kind of monitor things, write reports for people and that. I liked access databases. I liked that kind of stuff, but I just wasn't as heavily involved in the programming. So I forget where we started that question from. Oh, just how do I accept new technology? So
Well,
I
yeah,
always loved
the
early
impact, yeah.
adoption. Yeah, just early adoption of software, early adoption of like LinkedIn when they first started, Pinterest. And I still have accounts. I did close my LinkedIn account a year or so ago because since I retired, I thought, what's the point of that? But I know some people just transitioned from their tech career over to, say, a writer, and so they would just promote their books. And I did some of that, but it really didn't seem like it was catching on. So I just thought my time is better invested elsewhere, such as what we're doing now. I just find this whole podcasting genre, really thrilling. And I wish I'd gotten in on it right at the beginning, but I guess there's still a market, there's still an audience out there for newcomers. So,
There's always an audience, and
mhm.
it kind of is funny to me as you say, like a year ago, you left LinkedIn, and I joined
Okay.
LinkedIn, and I air shows to it, and so for people that are watching this, we're getting close to her losing her
Battery.
battery power. So she had warned me that that might happen, and
Sorry.
we're almost done. And I just wanted to bring attention to a couple of things that Iron Bear had said, and your thoughts of talking about technology and stuff. And he'd said I'd almost count the radio packs they used in World War II
Uh,
were a close range cell phone, and that's true. You could
mhm.
look at it as a cell phone because it was direct communication, but there was no dialing, and so I always wondered how that worked. And that made me think about the movie We Were Soldiers about the
Mm,
Vietnam, where the guy is like working on the radio and he picks up what's happening in Vietnam,
yeah.
and they're hearing the battle firsthand. and the horror that's going on over there and everybody being stunned. And he goes, how did you do that? And he goes, well, it must be atmosphere, or must be picking up atmosphere.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, you're my radio guy since you got that in. And he was like, don't take that off. This is what we're going into. And so it was like they were a little bit maybe more prepared than other new recruits. And that, is a thing about technology, we don't think about is what they were exposed to now firsthand versus waiting to read about it in a paper.
Hmm.
And on a funnier note, Iron Bear says the generation today won't even know what a Radio Shack was.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, Radio Shack was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool. In fact, that's one of the things that drew, well, I love all the 80s type shows anyway, the Stranger Things. I had to watch Stranger Things. It was just amazing. So it was all the stuff
Yeah,
that I was used to from my youth.
yeah, and we are over an hour and a half, and
Yeah. I
we
know
had
we could
talked
talk all
about,
day.
we could, and there was one topic that's pretty hot right now for everybody, and I want to give you a chance to voice it before we talk about where they can get your books if you want to go there. And that is disclosure. What do you see disclosure as, and where do you see it going, and where do you want it to go?
Oh, that's such a big topic, right? Hmm. Well, first of all, I've not seen the movie yet by Spielberg. I probably will see it just to know what they're putting out there for the newbies. But for people, and you're much more versed on this than me, but I'm a big X Files fan. And so over the years, some of the X Files, especially the ones that were centered around the UFOs, which would be disclosure now, right? I think there should be a lot of disclosure. I think there should be a lot, not just about what the government has known um, and not wanted to share for reasons, I'm sure, of loose lips sink ships. We
Right.
always were told in the government. Um, but so for national security, but for, I think as more and more countries join together, more union or pacts or whatever they are develop, or even borders come down, then perhaps there will be more disclosure. I don't know how much they'll disclose because of national security interests. Um, but I think it's definitely going to be a genre that's going to stay in the public domain for quite a while, just like the JFK assassination has my whole life. 9/11 has since 2001. I think there's always going to be some propaganda around it, unfortunately, and I think it's used sometimes to distract us for sure. But I do think that there's a nugget of truth in all of those things. And if you talk again, if you just talk to real people, maybe not on the internet, but if you just talk with people in person about some of these things, you'll find out there's there are shards of truth to almost all of the stories. They just may be skewed so that you're not really getting, and that was one of the things I did want to talk about today, was how much information can we reveal without giving away too much information about ourselves personally so that we're hacked or scammed in some way, but
Right.
that we can still share the truth. And I think some of the ways that's done is through storytelling. And so that's one reason why I love the X Files and Stranger Things and shows like that, because I do think that Hollywood, there's good people and there's not so good. So the good people, I think, do want to get some of that truth out, and they just hide the truth in the story. And so that's also why I'm much more interested in nonfiction than in fiction. But the caveat is some of that fiction is based on truth. So you just have to put your thinking cap on and use your discernment. And like you said, some people will resonate with some things versus others. Some people will pick up on things because they're more aware. and other people are going to be left behind and be in the dark because they're not willing to concede that, like, I'm no fan of Bill Gates, but thanks to Bill Gates I had a career for 35 years, right? So I'm not shooting, I'm not cutting the hand that feeds because he doesn't feed me anymore. So I think with that said, you will get more and more truth. It may come out more piecemeal than what we want, but you'll get more and more as people retire, like me, and they can speak more freely, and their income is not directly tied. So always look for that. The follow the money thread, that works, but look for the fact that, people that are still in some way connected to the government, they can lose their government pension if they say the wrong things in public to people or even on a podcast, right? So just be aware that sometimes people want to tell you, but they can't because they're limited. And then sometimes people are so conditioned that they won't tell you under any circumstances, or they signed NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, that they can't disclose what they were doing their whole career. So there's many facets to that question, but that's a
Right.
good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like how you touched on, the fact that we give too much personal information
Mm-hmm.
out in public because we feel like, oh, these people are our friends, or, oh, if I don't give this information, then people won't find me as credible.
Right.
And so there is a fine line of, being transparent and upfront with people, but also protecting yourself and your
Mm-hmm.
loved ones around you. And so my hope is, people can respect that and work within that and not go, oh, because this person won't tell me what city he lives in. I don't think I can trust, that he's really, sharing the truth, because if he was really, sharing the truth, he would, tell us everything. And it's like, I am telling you everything, but I don't want you on my doorstep either.
Right.
So,
Right.
there is that factor of, you know, self preservation and,
Yes.
privacy, of, not being swarmed by people. And
Exactly.
we forget about that because we live in an age where, we have people photographing people and making
Mm-hmm.
public what they ate or what they're wearing. And I'm like, why do I care? Why, why do I need to know this? There's so many other topics out there that, are not getting coverage because of this.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm like, why do you people not notice this is just distraction? And why are you so fascinated by, oh my God, so and so ate a sandwich today? And I'm like, really? I eat one every day, but I don't feel the need to like publish it, and go, hey, look, I made a sandwich.
right. That reminds me of like the celebrity things that get passed around, right? Yeah.
Right.
So are you going to try the vegan burger because, I don't know, Taylor Swift or someone ate one? It's like, no.
Yeah. No kidding. I'm like, that's more reason not to in my book.
Yeah. Yeah. Just realize that sometimes they're paid to, especially if they're in the media, if they're in the public eye, they're paid. So I don't
Oh,
always trust what I see from, you know, stars or someone. And why are they called stars, by the way? Doesn't that point us back to astrology? It's like we should be looking at real stars, not the damn people that are paid millions of dollars to lie to us. So
that's true. And I was talking with someone about religion, and we kind of came upon a discovery, so to speak, of our language and lingo. Is, we have shows like American Idol,
mm-hmm.
and we
Good one.
idolize these people. And the reason I'm trying to stress the word idol is, when you go to like Christianity,
Yeah.
one of the commandments is, you won't worship idols. You won't,
Right.
have any other idols but the Lord.
Yeah.
And people sit there
Go
and
ahead.
are like, oh, this person's doing this and this person's doing that, and you're idolizing them, but you're not realizing by idolizing them, you're making them an idol. And so you are worshiping an idol. And they're like, no, I'm not. Oh, I am, ain't I? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so that's why I think, the media and everybody tries to promote the celebrities is because you're idolizing them and fitting into an agenda that, fits their needs over paying attention to what's really going on.
Right.
And yes, I used that to cover the fact that her husband was walking by. And I was trying to distract everybody by throwing an idea of idolism out.
Yes, he needed to eat lunch.
Yes, well, I need to as well. And so thank you, Sheila, for coming on and being a guest and sharing more of your story with us. And I just want to put out there to everyone, if you want to hear Sheila's presentation, as was we were talking about, if you go to Gina Virginia Casella, her Buy Me a Coffee, you can get the replay of the conference and help to support Gina and Sheila. And just know, as well, that our presentations, we don't get paid to make the presentations. So we have no reason to make them anything but our truth and our experience. And so that's another reason to me why it was so great, what she shared, because it was her authentic story and her authentic experience coming through. And so I just want to honor that. And I just want to say before we go, from my heart and the heart of my shows to you, Sheila, thank you for, everything you're doing. And thank you for what you're doing for humanity. I know it sometimes doesn't feel like much, but the smallest pebble can make the largest ripples. We just don't see it. And so thank you for your authenticity.
Thank you, Michael. Mwah, mwah.
And Jason, he's a moderator. He just chimed in and goes, "Did I miss it?"
Yeah.
Yes, Jason, you did, unfortunately. So you will have to catch the replay. Um, I can't sum up in like a couple of minutes the almost 2 hours that we talked about. So do be aware that this show is a free replay, so it will be available as soon as we're done. And so, with that being said, is there anything, Sheila, that you want to promote out real quick, or do you feel like you got everything out that you wanted to get out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on most social media, so if you're on Amazon, you can find my Amazon author page there. Just type in, search by my name. Make sure it's EY for Murray, the last name Murray, and EILA for Sheila. So, other than that, yeah, because there is another Sheila Murray who's an author in England, I think, somewhere, but she's a doctor. And, so and you'll see a picture of me that's somewhat familiar, I'm sure, even if it's an older one. But yeah, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, most all the big ones. I have my YouTube channel, and then my husband and I have a music channel that's just radio shows. So if you just want to listen to music without really the video part, there's what we do is we do one still image, and it's an AI generated type image, and then play the song. I introduce the radio show at the beginning, and then we just play music for an hour or 2 hours. So that's called unsolicited radio, because when you make music and you try taking it to a label or to a radio station to play, they have their gatekeepers. So unless your material is solicited, meaning they're asking for you to share your material with them, they're not really interested in you. So we called it unsolicited radio. So it's just at unsolicited radio on YouTube.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't share that with you yet, but I will. I'll share that in the private chat. I think it's going to be, I'm not sure this works, but I will attempt this. Probably, I don't know if you have to put user first. So if it's unsolicited, but if you search for that, it should come up. I don't think there's any others.
No, and I think it's great that you guys do music together and that you travel together and travel, I'm assuming like separately, like, because you were saying like he didn't want to go, so that
well, he was with me on the trip. He just didn't go into the chamber that much.
Oh, okay.
So he was with me the whole week, just not that morning of winter solstice. So, yeah. And, and I was fine with that. And he was fine with that. And that way the friend got to go. So, and he was really more, we want, and we promote this too in our own lives, is we want to meet people where they are. And, if they're not ready for certain information, we won't force it, right? And this person was ready and willing and just so excited about going. And so we said, well, then definitely Richard took the back seat, and let John go. And then what was great was because there weren't so many of it. I was the only person that year to go from the US that got selected to go. So so when they found that out, the center told us that. So when the center, recognized that, they said, after everybody else left, they said, we want you to. So thankfully, John's wife came with us on the bus to get there from Dublin to Newgrange. And so she was able to come in. And so was our bus driver, which really made our original bus driver from July very jealous, because now this 19-year-old girl gets to go in. Edel got to go in, and Tony didn't get to go. But, things happen for a reason. And so she was thrilled that she got to go in. It made her life up to that point, as an Irish woman, to get to go in there and experience that. And we were able to take pictures and videos that you're not allowed to do when you're there. Like in July, we were not allowed to take pictures and videos because the center, of course, has the professional videos and pictures, and they want to sell their magazine and, so on and so forth. Right. So it was just because we were there for winter solstice that we were able to get the pictures and videos that we got, which are some of which are on my blog anyway.
Right. Well, thank you. And thank you for coming on and everything that you do. And be sure to follow and subscribe to her channels and her website. You can follow her along there and follow along my channels, because you never know when Sheila will be making another appearance, and hopefully we will have her back on to share some more of her experiences. And thank you so much. And thank you everyone in the chat room and everyone who's watching. Make it a wonderful day. And thank you for joining us for this special morning episode. And I will say, today is unique because I do have an afternoon and an evening show. I usually have just 2 shows a day. So do come back and tune in for those. It is 2:00 Central Time and 6:00 Central Time today. So all special times, all special shows. And thank you so much, Sheila, for sharing with us. And with that, I'm going to say, have a great day, everyone, because, yeah, you notice we can just start up again and just keep going and going. And so my stomach is growling, and so I need to eat. So thank you.
Sure. Sure thing.
All right. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.